Ever since Seaspray's first encounter with Alana, and just shortly before his departure from her home planet, he actually was told by her that despite she has a robot body, so that she could be with him, but they both agreed to be just friends, because a constant travel between Earth and her home planet would have been a very strange of time, because he had to remain back on Earth as his new homeworld, as in a way protecting it from Decepticons. Since these constant battles with Decepticons trying to find a way to be draining Earth's resources to going back to Cybertron. But one day, after a series of fights, Decepticons left Earth. After that, Optimus Prime defeated and even destroyed Megatron in a series of fighting. This was something that both or the whole team were never expecting to happen. But despite that Megatron was destroyed, Decepticons realized there were no point of being fighting against their enemy anymore, so they all decided to leave Earth and go somewhere else to be. But despite this, Optimus had given orders to his team to make sure the Decepticons were never being returning. If they did, they would always have to be on watch on it. But after 5 years, Decepticons never returned to Earth. And their mind, they may have traveled back to Cybertron and found a way for them to live as they used to be doing. Or maybe have found a way to restore the power reserves on the planet and so they could no bother Earth anymore. But during this time, Seaspray and Alana had been in constant contact. They usually contact each other from time to time by over messages. But after the Decepticons had been gone for 5 years, Seaspray thought maybe it was time to go so that he could see Alana in person after all this time. He even had asked Optimus for permission to leave Earth so that he can go see her. Because even Optimus, along his team members, knew about Seaspray's feelings for Alana and that she loved him. And in Optimus Prime's mind, he couldn't allow, he couldn't even stand to see his team members being separated from someone he loves so deeply. So he gave them the permission to go back to Alana's homeworld. Even despite this, Alana was really excited to be able to see him after all this time. She was just happy that he had returned. And the peace between on her planet had remained as peaceful. Even though the Autobots had been provided with some of the energy and some of the powers that required to them from her own planet as a peaceful token for their friendship. And even the Autobots aren't going to require a lot of this energy because they didn't want to be stripped this particular resources from Alana's planet because of that. And her people actually agreed to that. And they only give it as much they needed because they give them some of it and somebody that stored this particular energy for a future requirement. And even though that Lana was real happy to see Seaspray back on her own planet again, she was really happy to see him because after being away from each other for 5 years, their love for each other had remained solid strong. He was actually a little wanted to know more about herself, like how she had been handling to be as a robot on her planet after all this time. She told him that it was a little bit a different time to get used to it, adapted to new life as a robot rather from her organic life form she was used to be. But she was really happy to be with someone that she loves the most. He had even asked her if she would be willing to leave her home planet and go back with him to Earth to live with him and his team members. She said maybe that she would, but had to leave her home planet and her people. Since she is the part ruler of this her home planet, she it would be a very difficult decision for her, and not only for that will affect her life, but also affecting her people. And he agreed to do that. That would actually, he thinks it would have been the same. But later than that particular same evening, when Alana went to talk to her people about this potential of moving to Earth, Seaspray had contacted Optimus Prime. He had a bargain plan for him, which was about to leave so that he could actually be transferred from Earth to Alana's planet and be with her permanently. He knew that maybe Optimus were not maybe agreed on this, but to his big surprise, Optimus actually did approve this transfer from Earth to Alana's planet. When he told her about this, she had told him that her people were willing to allow her to go, as they could find someone else to be ruling for her people. But when he told her the big news that he was allowed to stay on her own planet so that they could be together, that shocked her. But after they both talked about this for some only for about an hour or so, which almost like felt for an hour for eternity for both of them, but they actually realized maybe they were meant to be on her planet, and maybe that Seaspray was meant to move to be with her. And so they both agreed and announced to the people that Seaspray will now remain on her planet as another sort of protection. And he agreed to be some sort of guardian for her people and her planet, just in case if something would happen, if another alien forces would have found her planet. But never happened. But she agreed to do so. And in the course of time, Seaspray actually went back to Earth with Alana so that they could visit his friends. And despite she loved Earth, but she loved her home planet even more. But she loved to see this different environment, despite having a lot of oceans and different even landscapes on its geographic sites on the features on the planet Earth. She was believed to see, happy to see, that not only the Autobots living there, but having sharing the planet with its intelligent life forms of human beings. She actually became friends with Spike, one of their first human allies. Even that Alana did stay on Earth with Seaspray from time to time for maybe sometimes for only a couple of days, maybe up to a month. But even doing this, she had actually a great time with him. Despite having to live on different planets, she actually loved to all of this. Alana was even eager to learn more about the Autobots' history, culture. Since Alana loved Seaspray and that he's going to stay there, and she had to ask Optimus for any advice for so that maybe that she could make Seaspray feel a bit more home on her planet, just in case of that he was getting homesick. And he actually agreed to do so because he thought that could actually help. And she was giving some of the ideas for how to make their shared home back on her planet to be more comfortable and maybe more feeling more as being on Cybertron or maybe on Earth. Seaspray had actually, ever since he came to Earth those millions of years ago and even awakened in the modern era, had actually come to embrace the culture on Earth with the human beings and to embrace its beauty and all this ocean and all this endless possibility to do. And now when he will find out that Alana had done the same things to some sort of decorated their shared home on her planet with some things from Earth and some of her based from her descriptions and even from her own memory, he actually liked it. despite knowing that May felt him a bit strange at first, but when he realized that she tried to make him feel more comfortable and maybe more home and on this new planet. And for that, he felt grateful. Especially when after she told him that it was actually Optimus' idea and his suggestions how to make how to somehow decorate their home together. But despite this, they actually didn't have any fights together. And even though her people was peaceful, he actually liked them all of them. Even there were maybe some arguments about what kind of things they weren't going to do together. Even though Alana was really grateful to have Seaspray by her side and even in her life. Even though Seaspray's love for Alana was beyond anything, he loved her more than anything this could ever been happened. Because he even remembers the very first time when he came to her planet after learning that the Decepticons was there to try to strip the planet's resource of the energy that they need to survive. After Alana had learned that the Autobots were more friendlier and rather been and Decepticons droids or spies or anything like that, he was grateful to be learning more about Alana and her people. They had so much things in common, and now, and especially when they had considered to be a couple, he couldn't have been asked for anyone better than Alana. Despite this, Alana still as the leader of her people, and she had often been asked some other people if she would maybe marry him and take Seaspray as the king of her people. She had actually thought about that at first because despite having been the sort of princess or the leader type of people, and that even the people there had even elected her to be the queen of the people, she had actually accepted the proposal of the position to be the queen. But it was a twist. They would need her to be married and have a king. But since she was already together with Seaspray, and that he has always been there for her people, and especially when the Decepticons came to be trying to steal their resource that they needed themselves. And after that, he had been proving himself to be worthy as a king. They actually had talked to her about that, but they had no idea if they were actually going to happen because who knows? But despite having these discussions with her people's leaders and council, she agreed to telling him about this proposal from her people, and she did. And he was actually surprised that they had even suggested him as a king of her people. Even though despite he had even seen himself as a king type of person or personality for a people. But as long as she would be happy to have him as a king, he would also be happy. But there were some at least trials or at least some discussions he had to talk to the council first before all of this. He wasn't even worried about any potential problems or any sort of problems at all with the council because they liked him. He has always been to help them with any sort of things that needed help. And they were only a minor discussions with the council of her people. And after the discussion was over, they actually had approved him to be a worthy king of the people. But they had suggested to him by proposing to the queen as a way to make it official. So he had decided to take her to an island which they usually go toward the sunset together, which was very close by to their home. as they watched the sunset together on the island. He wasn't even nervous at all. But when he actually told her, she could not have been silent for only a fraction of a second when she said yes. He was really excited, and when they both announced to her people their engagement and later be married and that he would be the king, every one of her people couldn't have been happier for him. But despite that, even when he became the king of the people, and even his friends was invited, they were actually also very excited for him. But there were even a lot of things that he needed to know now he's a king. He had to be taking care of a lot of royal duties and had to be part of royal meetings with Alana, and that would take some time to get used to. Because before then, he didn't have to be taking care of any such things before that. Even though despite when he was not a part of the Autobots, when he was giving orders by Optimus, he would say maybe an Optimus was like a king for his people, or at least for his team, but he told Alana he had learned the best to be a leader from his own former leader, Optimus Prime. And she smiled when he told her that. But after that they had been the king and queen for at least maybe about 4 years. They had often been asked if they would have any heirs to the throne. But that would be a little bit prolonged, since ever since Alana transformed herself to be a robot so that she could be with Seaspray, she would no longer be able to carry any babies for her. But that didn't stop them, because they both asked counsel of the people if it was possible, if they adopted a child, if they would adopt a child, if that one would be as legally and even official heir to the throne. Despite maybe that Alana and Seaspray could live forever almost entirely, would and that would not need any heir. But as they had done so in the past, they had always had an heir to the throne. So the council agreed to do so since they both could no longer have any children of their own, and building a copy of an like a transform of an Autobot were being considered to be as an heir, because that heir would have been an immortal being like his parents, which they were going to accept. So they adopted a daughter who was about 10 years old for people, and she actually liked her new parents. And even despite this, both of them was actually very happy to have someone like their daughter, and even that even even Seaspray. He was really happy when he remembers the very first time when he encountered Alana. And when she admitted to him those years ago that she had a crush on him, or that he liked him more than as a friend. And even despite they were apart for so long, and now they were married and having a family of their own, he was really, really excited. And especially Alana. She couldn't have been happier to be with someone like him. He has always been there for her, protected her from any harm, and especially when the Decepticons attacked her planet those years ago. And for that, she is deeply, deeply grateful to him. And this is how Alana and Seaspray found a true love got a big family together. The end.